Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I'm the Mortimer the Authenticator, and we have the Duality of Man, and, yeah, corporations continue to be cunts, surprising no one.
Yeah, and the worst part is that it's not just the corporations. Multiple foreign governments have gotten in on this massive wave of censorship. And the scary thing is that it all appears to happen like literally around the same time. Like it's just one massive wave.
Yep, looks like we're gonna have to Gamergate again. Who, who had 8 months into 2025 for Gamergate Mark III?
Yeah. So, y- as you may know, the situation with Steam is insane. MasterCard and Visa, well, it appears that they succumbed to pressure from the feminist group Collective Shout, but honestly, MasterCard and Visa are so massively powerful that they could just ignore literally any, feminist calling campaign. They're MasterCard and Visa, for God's sakes. But
But that would
the fact that they,
that would require them not to agree with said feminists. That's the issue, because the feminist types have a moral stranglehold on the halls of power. They don't need to in like utilitarian terms, but they will because they think collective shout is morally correct, just like they did Anita back in the day and so on.
yeah, and they did this whole wave of censorship under the excuse that they didn't want their brand associated with this kind of content because it could harm the brand, and that is the absolute most ridiculous thing. Because outside of paying their credit card bill, nobody really cares about MasterCard and Visa. They've become so big that they are basically invisible.
Well,
Literally,
yeah,
all they
they
did
don't.
was shut the hell up and collect money.
Their brands don't have a personality. Like, you could argue that things like Disney, things like Apple, things like Starbucks, they are brands with at least some ostensible like leeway to some kind of personality or corporate synergy or crap. But MasterCard and Visa are more or less in the same category as like phone companies or utility companies. It really doesn't matter to practically anyone which company they're doing things with, because a credit card is essentially like a utility in the sense that, frankly, a lot of people have both a Visa and a MasterCard because they can't tell the difference, or
And
they find it useful to have both.
And the thing is, though, even if you're not issued a credit card, Visa and Mastercard still issue all of the bank cards. Like I don't have a credit card, but my bank debit card has Visa on it. So you're gonna use Visa or Mastercard no matter what. So you don't have a choice. You don't. If you don't have a choice, you really don't care.
A
Now
little bit
people are
like,
starting to care, though.
yeah, a little bit like how even if you don't have a Patreon as a YouTuber, you're still going to probably have a PayPal, which means that they can go after that as a payment processor.
Yeah. And speaking of PayPal, apparently they're getting involved in this whole censorship debacle as well. We have this
Uh,
video here from Arch, and so let's get into it and see if Arch can explain what the hell is going on now.
yep, moving forward. Commence the arch.
Steam is in the process of getting debanked. But at the very least, that's what it's looking like. So, some of you that do not live in Canada, the European Union, England, Japan, Australia, or the US may have noticed recently that when you tried to purchase a game on Steam using PayPal, you'd get an error message saying that this form of payment is not available right now. I got it myself, as I'm, of course, a Norwegian, and at the time I
Also,
figured,
before we
okay,
get
well,
too far into the Steam details on the subject of debanking, TM, it appears, or at least it appeared as of like 3 days ago, that Arch, speaking of debanking, has been debanked by Visa and Mastercard. So, yeah, Gamergate Mark III when?
Yeah, honestly, this is absolutely insane. Like, th- I've long since thought that the government really should break up the whole Visa and Mastercard duopoly because I believe there was, I don't know, like this is a video that I can pull up next week possibly, but they were pulled into Congress to testify about some of the unfair business practices they've been doing because when it's literally just the two of them, they together can just come, to an agreement and then make the rules and nobody else um, besides maybe the government, has enough sway to break them.
Yeah, if you don't if you want to maintain any ability to financially do anything, you will deal with Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, or one of their subsidiaries at some point. So if all three of those just decide, you know what, fuck this guy in particular, um, then that guy is essentially an unperson. And this isn't even a hypothetical thing. This literally happened to Alex Jones. So, like, we know that this is a thing that can happen, for it has already happened before.
Yeah, this really is insane. I believe that they should essentially be at this point they might just need to be controlled by the state until make it so or maybe not controlled by the state, but like basically made like a utility where like you can't. People need to be able to do bank transactions
Yeah,
in
you
order to
can't
live.
just you as as the water company can't just decide, you know what, fuck that guy in particular, so no water for him. Or you can't as a phone service provider be like, you know what, fuck that guy in particular, so no phone for him. Um, and and Visa and Mastercard and other like payment processing and banking things are that level of so universal as to be like a non-substantive corporation. So for most people, they engage in payment processing and engage in banking without even thinking about it because it's just so universal that if you didn't, you would be the weirdo.
Yeah, and Elon Musk has talked about creating X payment processing. Steam has talked about creating their own sort of processing system, and I think these would be really good alternatives. The only problem would be, would all the other like online stores, all the other websites and companies, would they sign on to this, or would Visa and Mastercard apply pressure to say if you sign on with them, you can't continue with us?
Yeah, it's the same infrastructural issue as a utility. If all the phone companies get together and decide no phone service for you, with what recourse does that leave you? Well, if the people who are in charge of whether you can afford to, you know, exist decide fuck that guy in particular, what's to be done? And how are we get how are like I have a lot of faith in Elon Musk, but how, Elon, are you going to ensure that like Amazon and eBay and Etsy and all the other online things are willing to accept XPay, especially because despite the fact that Elon is probably the best of the billionaires, he is the most hated of the billionaires, which probably tells you something about our nouveau aristocracy. But yeah,
Yeah. So Donald Trump also went around this. He signed an executive order, the details of which I'm not exactly certain of, but I know that it was about making sure that Americans get fair banking treatment from banks and payment processors. So I'll look that up and we can go into more of it next week, along with the Visa and Mastercard being held into Congress. But let's get back to the arts
mm,
video.
yep.
Well, it's probably some sort of bug, right? Because they mentioned that they were working to fix the issue. So some sort of error with PayPal or the bank, or one of the countless intermediaries between you making a payment and the company actually receiving the money. Fair enough. But now, Valve has come out with a more official statement indicating that this is not a bug, this is a feature. As they say here, PayPal use on Steam is currently unavailable in my currency. Why? In early July 2025, PayPal notified Valve that the acquiring bank for payment transactions in certain currencies was immediately terminating the process of any transactions related to Steam. They would continue to be able to do transactions in Euro, Canadian dollars, Great British pounds, Japanese yens, Australian dollars, and US dollars, but everyone else was shit out of luck. This no doubt came as a rather massive surprise to Steam as well, which is why they initially seemed to treat it as some sort of a bug, as they probably...
Because who would ever think to themselves, oh, we're being persecuted by a company so vast and universal that we don't even notice they exist most of the time?
The thing is, Steam literally has not broken any laws. Like, Steam blocks any content that is against the law, and so it's really just based on it's legal, but we don't like it, so we're going to destroy it.
You sinned against the feminist order, and therefore, to the point that other feminists are coping harder than they've ever coped before and tried to frame Collective Shout as a traditionalist organization. Which, don't get me wrong, if it were a traditionalist organization, that doesn't change my opinion at all. My opinion is fuck your moralistic authoritarian fuckery. Morality is not a reason to fucking unperson someone unless there is, like, actual provable material harm to something that they did, in which case that's why we have legal codes and shit.
I don't know if it necessarily is a feminist argument. I know that was the excuse that was initially used, but I think that was just the easiest, excuse and vector by which to, deploy the first wave of censorship. I think this is just all about employing a form of censorship. This is the first wave and the easiest wave that we could get in, and then it's just going to ramp up rapidly from there.
And surprising no veterans of Gamergate, apparently, first they came for the gamers is like a default tactic now. I don't know why they would choose that of all things when, other actual crimes exist, but apparently, first and in perpetuity, they come for the gamers, and then everyone else follows suit.
Yes, and in this situation, they follow suit very quickly. Like the United Kingdom, like that rapidly increasing authoritarian hellhole, their like online safety bill has been blocking like essentially anything that the government doesn't like. They say it was to block, young children from viewing adult sites, but like they're blocking all kinds of content, including, crime content, like people reporting on crime, protest content. I believe they're censoring Wikipedia of all things. Like, the UK has gone insane.
Britain, you do realize that in the book 1984, Ingsoc were the bad guys, like O'Brien and Big Brother and all of them. They were the bad guys. Winston was the protagonist. I feel like there's been some confusion on this matter because the behavior of the British government is such that it makes me think they read 1984 and went, Ingsoc is a perfect model for the future. Derp. Although to be fair, there is one way in which modern Britain is worse than Ingsoc, in the sense that Ingsoc had borders in Oceania, and the migrant crisis, exists in reality. So in some ways, the British government is already worse than the villains of 1984. But que sera, sera, or as Art would say, details.
They've banned depictions of violence online of fictional creatures?
Yep. This also is not a line of thinking foreign to those of us that are veterans or orbiters of Gamergate back in the day.
So Tolkien is now banned in England.
Yep.
This is
Because we decided it is impure and therefore shall be banished.
I God, literally, like, if Shakespeare recorded his plays and uploaded them to the current British internet, he'd get arrested.
Yeah, and sadly enough, it's not. I don't consider it above the purview of the British police to dig up a 500-year-old corpse and arrest them on principle, because that apparently is the only principle that the British state currently has, which is if you commit an ideological crime, then you will be punished within an inch of your life. But the people grooming children, they did nothing wrong as and when they are brown. We would just erroneously attribute that to our own citizenry and let the foreign brown people get away with everything.
Speaking of ridiculous British arrests, have you heard about the British female police officer who arrested some young men?
No, and I'm bracing myself. What fresh hell have they descended to now? What level of 1984 are we on?
Well, two British female police officers dressed up in attractive running wear. You know, like those like um, run like athletic outfits that women wear that is like
Yeah,
almost specifically designed to attract men.
We call them pantsuits. I believe they call them jumpers over in the UK.
Yeah, but yeah, so they were dressed up in those, and they were like jogging through a park, and some guys that were passing by hit on them, and so they arrested them.
Even though they weren't on duty or fulfilling their role as police officers at the time, I'm assuming.
I don't, I don't know if they were on duty or not, but they were.
Okay,
The
but
fact that they just arrested just for hitting on them because they thought they were attractive is it's insane to me. Normal human interaction is now banned in Britain.
well, and to be fair, again, calling back to ye old days of 2013, this is not a foreign argument to anyone that survived Gamergate, because this is the cat calling is the devil level of intersectional feminism.
Yeah,
I'm just curious if they were on duty or not, because if they were on duty, then why in the fuck were they jogging in jumpers? And if they weren't on duty, then they are literally using the fact that they are police officers while they're off the clock and not empowered by the British state to just persecute and arrest people that piss them off for no other reason than they piss them off.
no, I love England. There's a lot about their culture and their history that I very respect, but I cannot take it seriously now. Just
Yeah, it's I've always wanted to go there, but ever since, the various waves of Islamic migration, I don't feel comfortable. But I also don't really feel comfortable with the machinations of the British state either. Like, it's getting to the point where I, as an American, feel the need to, like, in the same way that when your father gets too old, you put him in a home to take care of him. I almost feel like America needs to conquer England for England's own good, because England is not compos mentis as a country anymore. Like, we need to pay it forward. We need to pay back the legacy of the Anglosphere by putting Grandpa England in a home for their own protection at this point.
the Normans already did it once, Brits. You can't get upset if we do.
Yeah, like as I say, this is just us paying you back for all the awesome cultural legacy you gave us there.
Yes, it's becoming a big brother that you have to save from themselves.
Yeah, Grandpa is now on drugs and conspiring in his own destruction because he's gone demented. We need to put him in a home for his own safety.
Right, now back to the Norwegian.
Yep.
Presumably engaged in communication and negotiations with PayPal to try and figure out what on God's good earth was happening here. And they clearly didn't arrive at much in the way of a conclusion. So, what exactly has happened? Well, PayPal notified Valve that their acquiring back for payment transaction has decided to not do any transactions related to Steam. So, one might easily assume, because it seems sensible, that when you make a payment with PayPal or a credit card or whatever, then it's a fairly straightforward transaction, right? You swipe your credit card at the hairdresser's and you simply transfer $50 from your account to the hairdresser's account, right? No, not at all. There are a whole hecking hell of a lot of intermediaries in between you and the merchant actually accepting the money. One of these is the acquiring bank. As the name suggests, this is the money that actually gets your money when you are making this transaction. They act as an intermediary. So instead of the money going from...
Can we just stop for a second and realize how dystopic and bureaucratic that is in the first place? That it should really be just as simple as we received a transaction in this person's name for this person's account, and they're sending it to this person, place, or company so as to pay them for a thing. And that, in a sane and rational world, which is apparently far distant from this one at this point, in a sane and rational world, it would just be, do we have valid documentation that this person is making this transaction? Does the merchant, is the merchant selling the thing that they're being paid to sell, or do they provide the service they're claiming to provide? Good, job done. That should be that simple, but as with so many things, normative institutions, Dev, get in the way. And we're not allowed to have an issue with it, otherwise we're fascists, apparently.
I'm thinking about just buying Steam gift cards with cash. I mean, if only there was a way they could spend cash online that didn't require a freaking...
Yeah, and meanwhile, so many countries are moving towards a cashless society, which basically means that if you get on the wrong side of a normative financial institution, then you starve to death, essentially? Or at the very least, become so off the grid that you might as well be Amish. Or worse, because the Amish do still interact with the wider world in certain cases. So you will be banished to the year 1600s, or worse than that. You will be banished to the late medieval period before banking was a thing, because you got on the wrong side of the institution that's supposed to be a neutral utility of finance.
I'm not one that really supports too much government intervention, but I think the government really does need to step in at this point, because a corporation of unelected people are basically using their power to regulate our society in a way that no one asked them to.
Well, I mean, one of the most bare bones functions of the state is supposed to be officiating contracts. And what is a financial transaction if not essentially a contract that various entities are engaging with? It's that should be the state's base function at the end of the day. That and the making sure laws apply to everyone equally. But in this instance, they're failing at both. And yet, if you have a problem with that, they will call you a fascist, even though you're explicitly arguing against the state. And fascist credo is all things within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. So again, we're using the word fascism to mean the categorical opposite of itself, but details, as Art would say.
Let's get back to the video.
From you directly to the merchant, it happens to come through the acquiring bank, who then provides various services like fraud, prevention, etc. And they actually take the money before then passing it on again. So without an acquiring bank, there is no way to actually make the payment because you can't simply transfer the money straight up to Steam in this case. And with PayPal, of course, we have another intermediary. So it sounds like the bank that PayPal uses to do this with Steam has decided to terminate their relationship. This then leads us to a very big question again as to why. Why would the bank do this? What possible reason would a bank have to go, hey, Steam, I know we manage literally millions, if not billions of dollars in transactions for you every year. Take our slice, of course, but we really hate you now, and so we're going to only do certain currencies. Well, the certain currencies part is our first hint, because why would you accept US dollars but not whatever they use in Brazil or China or whatever, right?
Because the US is a major country and they can make enough fuss about it. That's probably why. Or at least they can for now, because, you know, calling back to what I mentioned earlier with Alex Jones, first they came for Alex Jones and not a lot of people stood up for him, and so it became normalized. And now here we are. But also, like, I'm not an ANCAP. I used to be in my late teens, kind of ANCAP adjacent, with a little bit of Ayn Rand flavor thrown in. But I'm not an ANCAP, and I haven't been for a jolly long time. But if this ain't a perfect example of why ANCAPs will just, you know, would just bandy about the phrase "must central bank" every time something weird goes on with finances, I don't know what it is. This is a perfect example of why you shouldn't trust central banks. Apparently,
This level of censorship is so bad that it actually makes me miss the time when their only vice was greed.
Yeah, it's here we are again. As it turns out, actually, greed and capitalism, not that bad. When you bring other moral considerations into capitalism, it gets infinitely worse. Whether that be of a intersectional feminist variety or a tradcon think of the children variety, it doesn't really matter. If you force companies to have moral considerations beyond are we being good to our customers, this is the clusterfuck you are letting yourself in for.
If they were really that concerned about wars, couldn't they just donate to a charity and shut the fuck up?
No, because that would imply that charities can accomplish more than bureaucratic institutions, and that will get you called a fascist populist by devs. So we can't do that.
That might be a bad thing as well, considering it's the NGOs that are largely supporting the migrant crisis.
Not to mention a bunch of other horrifyingly immoral things being done in the name of morality, as so many horrifying humanitarian travesties are. We are putting our jackboot on the human face forever for that face's own good is honestly scarier than the we do it because we can, a la 1984. Like there's it gets a full tier more fucked up when someone will put their jackboot on your face forever, but they'll think they're doing it for your own good while they do it.
Yeah, like that's the same reason that England is doing it, or that's at least why they say they're doing it. But I'm pretty sure it's just the Labour Party trying to stamp down on dissent because they are deeply unpopular.
Well, the entire British government is deeply unpopular at this point, and even Farage is at best a stopgap measure until Rupert Lowe can get in office. So, so that's how far the termites have dined there. I have never been more happy that we as Americans sorted this out centuries ago, so we don't have to deal with this shit anymore.
Yeah, people complain about the Orange Man, but the Orange Man would never do this to us.
Nope. Although a lot of the middle management judges that get in his way would and do and are, but details again.
Then go to Steam and say, yeah, this sucks, but don't worry, we're not going to take away your main markets, and I'm sure we can arrive at some sort of arrangement. Don't worry, just swallow this pill and everything will get better. Then in 2 or 3 years' time, they'll come back and go, yeah, we can't do Australian dollars anymore, but I'm sure you understand. Again, we'll continue working the problem, don't worry. Couple more years, yeah, Japanese yen's going to, and so on, as this will be a long process to isolate and, in my opinion, probably attempt to debank Steam outright. Now,
because again, apparently first they came for the gamers. Of all the groups, of all the potential recipients of this treatment, why is their first impulse, let's ruin all of the entertainment and all of the IP and all of the arts forever? Because reasons.
Well, and like I said, Steam blocks anything that is illegal. Like, so they can't even say that it's illegal content that they're upset about.
Yeah, Steam was already ahead of the game on this, but that's not enough because gamers are unironically one of the most oppressed demographics, if only because it seems to be the default, first port of call for every moralistic authoritarian in the modern age. You are not allowed to have fun sans our morality, and so our morality and become all your things. And we'll also destroy them from the inside out, but that's just the fine print. Don't pay any attention to that.
Yes, we'll either infiltrate them and make them suck and not fun anymore, or we'll just ban them.
Usually both, eventually, because once we ruin everything that we touch, we get really moralistically offended that people find other outlets to replace the things we ruin, and so we just don't let them replace the things that we ruin anymore. You will take the postmodern deconstructed thing we offer you, and you will like it, or you will be forced to say that you like it, or we will unperson you and everything that you love. And again, why games first? I don't know, but it apparently is the first move in ye old social justice handbook, apparently.
They're going to strap you to a chair and clockwork orange, tape your eyes open, and make you watch all of Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars for the rest of your life.
And She-Hulk, and Velma, and the Acolyte, and all the other various and sundries.
God help us.
Only ones that come to mind is probably the card companies right now. As we know already that Visa and MasterCard, via their, in essence, puppet Collective Shout, decided to lash out against adult games on Steam very, very effectively. I do not believe for a single instance that the Australian feminists really affected these card companies and made them do something they didn't want
See,
to.
that's I guess where Arch and I disagree, because I see this as Collective Shout pulling moral rank and basically going, you can either do what we tell you, or you're immoral. And unfortunately, we don't live in the 80s anymore, where the standard impulse was fuck morality. We want to make our customers happy because it makes us money. Damn it.
Yeah, but why would Visa and Mastercard even listen? Like Collector Shout is a bunch of nobodies based out of Australia. Like had
But
anybody even heard of them before?
no, but they are an exemplar of the intersectional feminist moral order, and therefore that's the thing. This is the one insidious kernel of truth at the bottom of all the social justice woo, and it's something we've understood for a very long time now, because this seems to be what happens whenever the cultural and ideological operating system of a civilization changes over. You attack the institutions of morality first, you convert the priests and then the kings, and then everything else follows suit, because you'd rather be moral than you would be successful or happy, and therefore by converting your morality first, we've already won. This is already our end game.
But like, their end game is only going to make them hated and push for more competition to appear. I I'm pretty sure I've seen photos of Visa and Mastercard stock greatly declining since all of this came out. People are very unhappy with them, and when an available alternative is presented, people will rush to go there.
Yeah, but they're hoping that they can flex enough moral force that they'll be able to stigmatize anyone who does flee them in favor of something that actually functions.
We're not living in that era anymore. That would have worked a decade ago, but times are changing.
Mercifully. Again, I wait for the day where Rupert Lowe becomes the Prime Minister of the UK. Then he, Trump, Bukele, and Malay can form the justice friend of politics.
And there's a good reason for that.
Hold on. Speaking of Bukele, did you hear what happened in El Salvador?
Nothing recent. What happened?
They removed term limits.
Interesting.
They want him in there forever.
I mean, to be fair, he is single-handedly bringing their civilization from a second or third world country into a first world country again. So, I'm not in favor of dictators or kings or regents and shit, but when everyone else is an incompetent fuckwit and the benevolent dictator is actually being benevolent, the argument starts to be a little bit more persuasive. I still don't like the idea of endless term, no term limits. But if I were living in El Salvador, methinks I would be a little bit more persuaded by the oh wait, you mean cartels don't have to be killing us and destroying our civilization from the infrastructure up? Sign me up to whatever that guy is selling. It's clearly working.
Thing is, he's still to get reelected, but he has like a 90% approval rating.
And again, when it goes from open air, Escape from New York level anarchy to something resembling a first world country for the first time in 50 years, yeah, I can understand the appeal, even if I'm skeptical of even benevolent dictators, to be fair. Because someday the benevolent dictator is either going to stray from the path, or he's going to be replaced by someone who isn't a benevolent dictator, and then we're back where we started, or even worse off. So
even if he doesn't last that long, he'll still go down as one of the greatest men of his nation.
I don't see why not. Again, he was looking at basically what's the fucking anarchist commune? His entire nation was basically Slap City, and he went, I'm gonna turn this into a semi-respectable first world country again. And he actually had the balls to actually do it. Like everyone wants to be that guy, but Bukele actually is that guy, and good for him.
And as well as Steam has now become an enormous player, one of, if not the largest players on a worldwide level. It dominates the entirety of the gaming market. And so Visa and MasterCard may be interested in trying to get their name somewhat scrubbed from a platform that has and does still host a lot of adult content, which they clearly do not like for, I believe, primarily political and moral reasons. And then, of course, PayPal refused to play ball as well. When Visa and MasterCard said, oh no, we didn't do this, we haven't done any of this, and PayPal, Steam, responded with, no, you did. You came into my shop and threatened to break my windows if I didn't pay you.
To be exact, what Visa and MasterCard did was that they talked to a lot of the third parties that did business with Steam and said that they weren't happy about a lot of the content that was being hosted on Steam. They basically put pressure on the third parties, and the third parties put pressure on Steam. But it was definitely Visa and MasterCard that started this whole chain of bullshit.
Well, assuming you leave off Collective Shout getting the ball rolling in the first place.
Yeah. But, so they are not going to be able to get away with this, no matter how many press releases that they put out, no matter how much spin, how many bullshit lies and excuses. People aren't going to forgive them for this.
I honestly hope Visa and MasterCard end up like Bud Light post Dylan Mulvaney, because I am so beyond sick of this shit. Like we've been dealing with this since 2013, and it's taken us 12 years to even get this far. It's enough, damn it. It's long since been enough. God damn it. The fact that this even got started in the first place is an issue, let alone that it's been a thing for 12 fucking years and some change.
Yeah, and a lot of I've been thinking a lot about this, and like I don't know if they're ever truly going to go away. They'll probably just lie underground, like they did like in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where they were basically just infiltrating like corporations, like media and university, and then in like the 2010s, they just like exploded out like a massive infection.
Yeah, because Obama got elected for his second term, so they thought that means they won. And then of course they came for the gamers, and the gamers went, hold everything there. What the actual fuck are you doing? And the rest, as they say, is history. Or I hope someday we'll be treated like history. I hope someday we live in a society where we can get a like biopic for somebody like Thunderfoot or Sargon or the Honey Badgers, and we can actually get something resembling reality as it actually existed in Gamergate, and not the like rewriting Ripley style revisionist history crap.
That would have to be probably made independently, because there's no way Hollywood, at the very least, if it maintains its current state, would ever do something like that.
Well, Hollywood is also circling the drain, because as it turns out, when you destroy every IP you can get your hands on for the sake of morality, Hollywood itself suffers. It's almost like you shouldn't deliberately and purposefully alienate your customers on the grounds that they're immoral or something. That shouldn't have needed to have been said, certainly not 12 years later, but here we are.
Have you seen the details on the Buffy reboot?
Sweet merciful Hecate. Why is this a thing? Wait, like,
did you not know it was a thing, or
No, I knew it was a thing, but my brain is still very much like even the feminist types still love Buffy. So who and why would you remake it? What like even
Apparently, a lot of the original cast is coming back for it, which I pray means that it's going to maintain a lot of the style of the original. But
but
in
didn't didn't
25,
didn't Joss Whedon fall foul of the feminist hive mind
well, yeah,
around Age of Ultron because he gasp shock horror portrayed Black Widow as actually maybe wanting a child one day. How dare she, or how dare he
yeah, but
portray her as that?
also Joss Whedon appears to have genuinely been a kind of a creep on the set of Buffy.
Well, and not to be a proud flag waving kick a steady any more than usual, but he is a male feminist, so the bodies were buried somewhere. It just took us a while to find them.
Yeah. Apparently, I think it was Charisma Carpenter who played Cordelia. Apparently, Joss Whedon, I think, harassed her a bit for while she was pregnant, and I think he also harassed her for being Catholic.
Yeah, apparently Joss Whedon is one of those very authoritarian creative types that it's my way or the highway. And to be fair, he actually does have some talent, so there's at least some reasonableness to that. But on the other hand, pretty much everyone who's ever worked with him has come out saying, yeah, no, when he was in a bad mood, it was best to just be anywhere else. Because apparently that shit even happened on like the Joss Whedon Justice League set and stuff. So this isn't a one-off. You know, he was a dick to Charisma Carpenter. This appears to have been a trend of his the whole time. Which again, male feminists and firebrand priests are in the same camp. There, he who decries God hating the fags uh, is most likely to have a series of altar boys on the side, and he who declares himself to be one of the most vocal male feminists in uh, entertainment history is probably the very same toxic masculine that he thinks all the other men are.
So let's continue with Arch.
Yep.
I would not put it past these companies to be doing a little bit of strong arming here, playing a bit rough, communicating to Steam and anyone else that there are consequences for stepping out of line. Now, I don't think Steam is necessarily a good target for this because Gabe Newell's big, beautiful heart is still beating, and long may it continue, because the moment he keels over, we are fucked. And Steam is absolutely in a position to simply begin managing their own payments. There have already been quite a lot of rumbling around this. Elon mentioned X payment, for example. Steam is absolutely in a position to begin creating their own infrastructure surrounding this. And with recent movements in the US, such as the right to fair banking or access to equal banking, for example, and various legislations now being put forward before governments across the world, these card companies are living on a little bit of borrowed time right now. They might simply be attempting to get whatever they can.
I'm still struck by the fact that even, 12 years post the first Gamergate, they haven't learned the lesson of leave the fucking bread and circuses alone. Why is entertainment your first port of call every time you feel like flexing your morality, damn it? Like,
because it's entertainment that allows us to.
You'd think they would learn from just sheer lack of effectiveness. Like every time we go for the entertainment, we get smacked upside the head with, getting on the wrong side of fandom. You'd think they would learn by sheer dint of, okay, this hasn't worked for the 24 times we tried it before, So why are we assuming it's going to work this time?
I uh, I think one of the reasons why they target entertainment is because if they just came out with like marches and speeches and protests, we would just continue playing our video games and watching our TV and movies and ignore them. I think by taking our entertainment, they make it so that they can't be ignored, which is honestly bad for them.
And again, I think it is partially a, if we rewrite the cultural operating system, if we change the operating like morality society operates under, we don't have to worry about quality. We don't have to worry about power, because if you control what the average person considers moral, then all you have to convince them of is doing anything but what we say makes you a bad person. And if what they were doing didn't ruin everything it touched so completely, that might work. But unfortunately, a crucial part of like Frankfurt School style deconstructionism is the idea that meritocracy is bad, that beauty standards are bad, and that anything resembling a subject or an intersubjective or objective standard for quality is just delu- a harmful social delusion we have to deprogram people from. And unfortunately, that premise is wrong, and anything you base on that premise will also be wrong.
And they're also some of the most ridiculous, like authoritarian, like purist censorship types you can imagine. Like anything that might make anything actually interesting, they want to block out. Even the Canterbury Tales had freaking sex and violence.
I Have they honestly started coming for the Canterbury? I don't know why I'm surprised. They came for Shakespeare a long ass time ago, but
I don't think they're smart enough
is
to
there
come for the
actually a
Canterbury.
push against the Canterbury Tales?
I don't think so. I think I was just pulling that as an example. Honestly, I don't think they're smart enough to go after something that old. But
Well, okay, I can see at least a social justice argument for leaving the Canterbury Tales alone, which is if you actually read the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer has a very poor opinion of clergy, and that might be enough for leaving it alone, at least until all the other parts of civilization have been purged, because people hate the Abrahamic religions more than they need to destroy things. It's weird that that's the line. It's like, well, does it oppose the Abrahamic religion strongly enough? Well, then we can leave it alone until we've conquered everything else. But it's weird that that's where they draw the line, and not, hey, maybe we should leave entertainment alone. But details, as Art would say.
actually, I don't think they're um interested in banning the Canterbury Tales because I think it's a lot of websites promoting the reading of quote unquote banned books. So I don't think there was one story from, hold on, let me see. It's from UCL uh UK news. Anger as oh sweet God. Anger as university puts trigger warning on Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales.
I faith in humanity is already low, and it's only going down from here, folks. They will literally go all the way back to, if you have an artistic expression more complicated than cave paintings, you are a bad person. And hell, they might even call the cave paintings problematic because it's focused on hunting and shite. So
Yes. Why
we
are
we
all the
might
men only hunting the mammoth?
and and didn't the Neanderthals of 100,000 years ago consider the feelings of the animals? Which, okay, by the way, we have evidence to suggest that they did. Like, one of the earliest expressions of animism was people shamanically honoring the animals they killed and, like, paying homage to the animal spirits. But these people don't have enough wherewithal to actually know shit, so I doubt that will save the cave paintings if indeed they come for them.
Honestly, it's my fault. I overestimated them or
Uh-huh.
underestimated them, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, apparently, the Canterbury Tales is considered triggering. I mean, it's a university in the UK, so
Not only is it a university, which would be bad enough, but it's a major university in the country and the culture that the Canterbury Tales originated from. But again, they already came for Shakespeare like a decade ago, so I guess I'm not surprised.
and through now, whilst they still have leverage before they'll be essentially forced to back down. Alternatively, this might also simply be a far more large-scale play, assuming that none of the legislative measures will actually ever be permanent or affect them. They're moving to solidify their monopoly and determine outright what people are and are not allowed to spend their money on, depending upon whatever their standards are at the time. As you may also mention and remember, Steam recently added a 15th point to their terms of service, where they essentially said outright that if something doesn't meet the terms of service of their payment processors and their collaborators, their companion.
those terms of service can literally be changed at whim.
Yeah, it's basically you will be assumed to be fine until we can find a reason why you piss us off, in which case we reserve the right to financially unperson you.
I honestly think this is going to lead to an increase in piracy.
And so much the better. Like I said, Gamergate Mark III when? Because every gamer worth the name loves Steam because Steam is freaking awesome and is a great concept and a great platform. So if you were trying to get us to pull Gamergate Mark III, congratulations, you appear to be headed in that direction.
In this payment processing market, then it wasn't allowed on Steam. That was already Steam bending over backwards, simply saying, okay, Visa, MasterCard, whatever your terms of service are, they're ours too now, okay? We've bent on over, we've torn our asshole open, and we've taken everything you can give to us. Are we cool?
No, because you're not bleeding yet, and they want to see you bleed. Like we're straight up in like rape fantasy territory here. They want to see you suffer, and if you're not suffering enough, they will fix it, quote unquote.
My current working theory, as this is now going well beyond merely the censorship of adult titles and into the realms of a straight-up massive coup in practice, where these card companies are attempting to extend their influence way beyond anyone who simply, makes money go from A to B should ever do or should ever have. This
because
also, by
as George Orwell warned us, it is not merely enough to obey Big Brother, you must love him while you do it.
Yeah, honestly, this is genuinely scary because at that point, it's not a matter of whether or not you're obeying the law, it's whether or not you're obeying Visa and MasterCard. And the law, if you break, some laws like you pay a fine or you spend a couple months in jail and you get on with your life. But Visa and MasterCard could debank you permanently, which could affect your ability to do literally anything like a normal human being.
Not to mention, by debanking you, they are essentially forcing you to break certain laws because wonder if you wind up homeless as a result of not being able to engage with money, and then they will get you for squatting, or they'll get you for being a transient, or they'll get you for being a drug addict, and so on and so forth. And then you will be locked up in the prison, etc. And Lord only knows how many of those people, if they're high profile enough, will get Epstein because Visa and MasterCard feel like it. Like, if they're willing to
Pretty
debank you,
long-term solution too.
they're not above paying assassins to get you once you've been got at that point.
That might be true, especially if there's a threat of breaking up the duopoly.
Mhm.
This problem is going to be a regulatory action. As much as one can easily hate upon the government when it comes to regulations and their infinite need to constantly grow larger and more useful, or use less over time, even if Steam manages to make their own payment processor, well, they will still require some banks to work with them, unless they're going to make one. And as we can see right now, it does appear that the card companies can get to the banks as well.
Well, not to mention also the incestuous like connection between corporations, especially those shadowy omni corporations, and politicians. Because as we know, politicians are some of the most easily bought motherfuckers on the planet, and so if Visa and MasterCard say want the government to be on their side, the government will be on their side. So, it's only a matter of time, because politicians make laws, or can at least incentivize the making of laws, but corporations, especially omni corporations, can incentivize the creation and furtherance of politicians. Therefore, in a roundabout way, and in fact, all the more dangerous because it is more covert this way, Visa and MasterCard just tell the politicians what to do, the politicians tell the laws what to do, and then everyone else gets fucked along the way. Because at least if they were doing this openly, they might be conceivably accountable for it, but they're not. Because they're doing the feminist thing of overt power is more useful than, or rather, covert power is more useful than overt power, so covert power is what we will wield.
Yes, it's also, in many ways, in order to, enforce their will, but have somebody else take the fall for it.
Yep, it's puppet masters all the way down, and the puppet masters you see are the ones you're usually meant to see. Granted, we all know things like BlackRock and those sorts of companies are to blame, but notice how little we can actually do against them, especially when they can buy and sell politicians and buy and sell judges at the drop of every hat. So, wah, 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 wah.
Interesting times indeed. As whilst I do expect Steam to fight back on this, it remains to be seen how effective that fight will be. If there's anyone who does stand a chance, though, it probably is Steam. And if there's anyone who is going to be willing to take that fight, it is also probably going to be Steam. So take this black pill with a little bit of hope as well. Although, man, I'm not even going to start listing the sheer number of implications that the card companies being able to simply dictate to anyone and everyone within entertainment what is and is not acceptable is going to be. Especially as, again, the banks themselves, well, they can't operate without the card companies. The card companies have become our payment institutions in total. They're clearly beginning to flex their muscles somewhat.
And again, it's sort of surreal to me that first they come for the gamers, the geeks, the fans, and the nerds. It's like It's like all of society is one giant high school cafeteria at the end of the day, and the nerds get shit on the most, so they're the first punching bag.
A lot of the stuff that was banned is smaller, more indie projects. How much until they start using their pull to target the big corporations and dictating them, like what
Assuming
kind
that
of
the big
game?
corporations aren't already in line, which is the other thing.
I mean, maybe you'll always have like a lot of these game studios are being like brought in under large umbrellas like Microsoft or Sony, but I think it's going to be of like this one studio under Microsoft is going to make see like this you know horror game, and then the payment processor goes to Microsoft and says, "Hey, these people that are working for you, they're making this game like with these types of elements and themes to them. We really need you to shut that shit down."
Yeah, make it go away, or you'll be the one sleeping with the fishes.
Yeah, right when things were starting to look up, just shows that the fight's not over. The fight is never over.
Mm-hmm. Which means we're about to get Gamergate Mark III. Third verse, same as the first two, hopefully.
All right, so it's about time to wrap things up. Do you have any final words regarding the ridiculous amount of censorship coming for our entertainment yet again?
Just don't let them demoralize you guys. The reason they bitched about Gamergate back in 2013 was because Gamergate was actually semi-effective. The reason they bitched about it again when the Sweet Baby Inc. thing happened is because it was actually semi-effective. And mark my words, they will create all sorts of moral narratives of how much of a travesty Gamergate 3 is because they actually fear ideologically Gamergate 3. So don't let them tell you that you're impotent. Don't let them tell you that you're useless. Because if you were actually useless, or God forbid, a useful idiot like the Antifa types are, not only would they not be demonizing you, they would actually be supporting you. So the fact that you're not a useful idiot is exactly why you're about to get yet another round of journalistic unpersoning.
Yeah, this is going to be different from the last time, the first Gamergate, because we ourselves are now a lot more experienced. We're more familiar with these people's tactics and ideologies,
And
and we
and they
also
and
have
they haven't and
more
their
methods
biggest
for
weakness is that they haven't changed, but we have.
yes. We're far more prepared to deal with them this time than we were the first time around.
And one of the reasons the internet scares them is because by the time the mainstream media gets their teeth into something, we'll have had a 10-year zeitgeist go by on the internet. Like that's the reason why the hacker known as 4chan TM used to be the devil. It's because they don't understand how 4chan can weaponize their autism faster than the mainstream media can make hit pieces.
All right, buddy. I've been Mr. E.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator. Praise Keck once again, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Cheers, guys.
Goodbye, everybody.